I also want to talk too about some of the other controversy around the pardons. And, you know, I found it so amazing that there was outrage around some of the January 6 rioters' pardons. And, you know, I can understand why some people would be upset about that. But there was far less from the left about Joe Biden not just pardoning preemptively his whole family, which seems to me like, at best, an admission that the justice system is indeed politicized, but also, you know, a number of violent murderers, including somebody who killed 2 FBI agents. And there's been far little outrage about this. I just think that is absolutely appalling in a horrendous way for Joe Biden to go out.
It is, James, but here's the issue. It's a self-inflicted wound by the Trump administration. All they had to do was pardon the nonviolent people now and then say, we're going to come back to everybody else. And they would have stayed out of the way of the conversation about what Biden had just done. Keep in mind, they did this on back-to-back days. Biden did it as he was walking out the door, and then Trump did it as he was walking in the door. And Trump sort of stepped on the message. The discussion should have been about what Biden just did. You mentioned some great examples. I'll add another one to the list. He pardoned Anthony Fauci. Everybody knows that. You look at the details. He pardoned Anthony Fauci for everything in the world beginning on January 1st, 2014. Really? 2014? COVID didn't raise its head until January of 2020. So what's the magic of that date? What was Tony Fauci doing for 6 years before COVID that merits a presidential pardon? That is what the story should be about. But because the Trump team decided to go ahead and pardon even the violent offenders, that became the story. Look, you can have a debate about it. Differing reasonable people are going to disagree about those pardons. I'm looking at it purely from the political and media standpoint. The Trump decision ended up crowding out the coverage that should have properly gone to these horrible decisions that Joe Biden made as he was leaving office.
Yeah, no, I think you're right there. I think probably the two canceled each other out politically. But before I let you go, I also want to talk about Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Apparently, he is going to visit Panama as early as next week, and he's also going to hit Guatemala, El Salvador, Costa Rica, and the Dominican Republic. Now, everybody is sort of talking about Panama because there's been all that talk about the canal. Do you think there may be some discussion about revisiting the treaty that Jimmy Carter signed that gave the canal away, I think, for $1?
Sure. I think that conversation bears taking place in a context. Why is he going to these places? This is in my guess. It's an educated guess. This is about China. This is about reestablishing our sort of dominance, our hegemony in the Western Hemisphere, of countering China's attempts to make inroads. Panama is certainly front and center in terms of the Chinese efforts right now, but China has been active in Latin and Central America for a long time. And there's a reason I think you're seeing Marco go down to this part of the world. And it's not just because he's a fluent Spanish speaker and can speak to people in their own language. It's because we are taking care of business here at home. And this is part of the larger efforts by this administration to start to aggressively push back on Chinese sort of engagement here in the Western Hemisphere. It doesn't surprise me. I think there'll be a very candid and very fun conversation regarding the canal. But yeah, it's the right conversation to have at the right time. The Panamanians are supposed to be our folks, not the Chinese folks.
Mick, we're going to have to leave it there, but I promise you next week we're going to pick that up, and I want to have a deep dive about the Monroe Doctrine and what's going to happen around this hemisphere. Thank you so much for your time.